Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to another Game Thrifter video. I wanted to do a PlayStation 3 buying guide. I did an Xbox 360 one earlier, and I thought it'd be good to get this in before the holidays are officially over. I think the PlayStation 3 is a great console. It is the perfect time to collect for this console, and a lot of people ask questions about, maybe what type of console to get or what's a good group of games to get. So what better time to do a buying guide for the PlayStation 3 than right now? It's one of the most highly underrated consoles. It got a slow start. It had a lot of issues at the beginning of that generation, but really came on to have some fantastic exclusive games. I used my PS3 for the exclusives for the most part, although there are some pretty good multi-platform games that work just well on the platform too. So with that in mind, I want to go ahead and get started because we all know what it was like when we heard that awesome news that we were going from the PlayStation 2 to the PlayStation 3.
PlayStation 256. It's slightly faster to the max.
256? Oh, and I'm stuck with this useless 252.
Don't destroy me. I can still make you happy. To the max.
So there's three different variations of the PlayStation 3 really. Several hardware models which are referred to by the size that is included with the hard disk of the original one, 20, 40, 60, 80, and 160 gigs. Although referred to by their hard drive size, the capabilities of the console vary by region and actually when they were released. The only difference in the appearance of the first five models was the color of the trim and the USB port, so you have to keep that in mind as well. The original one, there was versions of these that could play games via software emulation, and there's ones that could play games by hardware backwards compatibility, so keep that in mind when looking. These have a higher failure rate than a lot of people realize. It's hard to find them. They're a little bit more expensive. There's the Slim model, which is the redesigned version of the PlayStation 3. Obviously, people just call this the PlayStation 3 Slim. It actually features an upgradable 120 gigabyte hard drive, 160, 250, or 320 gigabyte hard drive. It's about 33% smaller than the original one, and it doesn't do any of the PlayStation backwards compatibility. But this is my favorite version of the PS3. It's compact. It's easy to use. It's got sort of a sleekness about it. I really, really enjoy it. This is the one that I recommend. It's highly collectible, and it's not very expensive. And then there's the super slim model, which is a lot of people like this model because there's not a lot of mechanical parts to it. But for me, I've always had the disc tray break because there's no mechanical parts to it. It just kind of breaks or whatever. But yeah, you can get this version. It's pretty cheap. It looks cheap to me. It feels cheap. But a lot of people like this one. So, it really kind of just depends on what you're into and what you're looking for. For me, I always just say the Slim was probably the best one and kind of take it from there. So when it comes to software or the games, PlayStation had a lot of really cool ones, and I love kart racing. It's one of the reasons why I like Nintendo so much. And Little Big Planet Karting and Mod Nation Racers are both incredibly fun kart racing games on the PlayStation 3. This is something that hardly anybody talks about. And yeah, these franchises are long dead, but they're still incredible for what they have to offer, and they're still a lot of fun to play even today. I mean, the online's not there, but still fun campaign and things like that in terms of being able to kind of just have a fun kart racing game, or if you wanted to play locally against family or friends, that's always an option there as well. They really did a good job with it. They had such a variety of exclusive games that it made owning a PlayStation 3 a worthwhile investment. No matter what. I mean, yeah, like the PlayStation 3 really came on late in the life cycle, and this is just a prime example of why so many people jumped into the PlayStation 3 at some point or another. Obviously, there's more than just the exclusive games on the PlayStation 3, and I really loved X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's such a fantastic game. It's an underrated game. It's certainly a hidden gem. I love playing through this on the PlayStation 3. It's really a visceral, like M-rated, fun, action-packed game, and something that you'd want in a Wolverine game. and it holds up incredibly well today. Now, it can be a little bit more on the pricey side. I mean, it's not $100 or anything, but sometimes it can run, $30, $40 depending on where you're at, and, that could be a little bit pricey for people, but I love having this game in my collection, and I feel like it really does the character justice and is a proper Wolverine game. And, I think a lot of people really came around to it after the fact. Like, originally, I think many people maybe just thought it was another movie game and it wasn't worth its weight. But to me, this game was really fun and great right from the beginning, and I highly recommend it if you're going to pick up a PlayStation 3. Speaking of superhero games, Batman Arkham Origins definitely getting a spot on this list. I absolutely love this game, and I try to put it into as many of my lists as possible because I try to tell people, I mean, listen, this game isn't one that is made by Rocksteady, but it is still a really, really good Batman game, and I think it has some of the best boss fights in all of the Arkham games, and honestly, it's just an underrated game, and still tied to the consoles, the 360 and the PS3, although it is backwards compatible if you have the disc with the Xbox version. But anyway, this game, I think it costs $20, $25, something like that. Not bad, and hopefully one day they remaster it and put them on the newer consoles, but until then, it's still a nice game to pick up and play on the PlayStation 3. Now, if you like old school hack and slash, Sony's got you covered with God of War 3 and God of War Ascension. Now, I like these games a lot. I think God of War Ascension feels more like an expansion to God of War 3, and that's not a bad thing in my opinion. Both these games are incredible. I've mentioned it numerous times that God of War Ascension really feels like it gets more into Kratos' backstory and kind of makes him a more, I guess, sympathetic character without making him overly weak, like some of the newer God of War games. Now, I like the new God of War games. The first one from 2018 is probably my favorite, but they do make Kratos look significantly weaker and softer than these games, which is why I love to recommend these games to so many people. God of War 3 was such a fantastic time for the PlayStation 3, really kind of started its comeback in my opinion, and Ascension really just kind of continued that. So yeah, definitely highly recommend both these games, and Ascension is still tied to the PlayStation 3. Speaking of underrated games, Starhawk, a PlayStation 3 exclusive, is such an underrated game, and somebody mentioned in the comments once, how come you didn't mention Starhawk? Well, I believe I might have mentioned it in one of my other PS3 videos, but for the most part, this is a game that hardly anybody knows anything about, and it has a fun campaign to it. Obviously, I think the multiplayer has been shut off long ago, but still, this just goes to show that Sony was way ahead of the curve with their exclusive games. They offered such a variety that it's really kind of hard to believe, honestly, and I'm thankful for that because it's a fun console to collect for. This is a very inexpensive game to get, and it's a game that is an absolute blast to play. So if you are looking for something of a little bit different variety on the PlayStation 3, and maybe you've never even heard of it, it's worth picking up and playing through it on the PlayStation 3. Honestly, the Resistance trilogy might be one that is severely underlooked and overlooked by a lot of people. Like, Insomniac Games was doing work on the PlayStation 3 and hardly anybody seemed to notice, but Resistance 2 is probably my favorite of the franchise, and so that's what you're seeing here. But really, you owe yourself to go back and play through all three of these games, like the trilogy. It's such a wild and fun time, and the games themselves have held up incredibly well, and still the PS3 is really the only place you can play these games. I think unless it's like talking like streaming or something like that, but overall these games are a lot of fun. They still look very, very good for, considering how old they are. And it's just a really good story that kind of unfolds in these three games. So highly recommend the Resistance games. You can pick up all three for under $30 combined, honestly. So what are you waiting for, man? Give the Resistance series a try. One of my all-time favorite games, Uncharted 2 Among Thieves, and not only just one of my all-time favorite games in terms of that generation, but of even today. Like, I absolutely love the Uncharted games, and Uncharted 2 might be one of the greatest games of all time. It is such a fantastic thrill ride of a game, and such an adventure game. Yeah, you can play these games on, PlayStation 4 as well, but it's still worth it, in my opinion, to play on the original hardware, the PlayStation 3, and they hold up very well. You can see, never has there ever been a game, in my opinion, that starts you off in such a way as this game, and it never really looks back. And that's what I love about Uncharted, is it grabs a hold of you and really doesn't let go, which I think is fantastic. You don't see games really do that very often right now. And playing as Nathan Drake in this game, I think really kind of gave the PlayStation 3 some legs into people understanding that, hey, they're really serious about exclusive content and having some great games come out. And, it's a fantastic series to play through. You owe it to yourself to play through all 3 of these games on the PlayStation 3. Do you like great storytelling? Then Heavy Rain might be up your alley, because I think this is one of the better stories on the PlayStation 3. They did a really good job with it. The company that did this game actually also did Detroit Becomes Human, which is one of my favorite PlayStation 4 games, and they also did Beyond Two Souls, which is another great PlayStation 3 game that you could give a try to, because I think that's a fun game as well. And they've actually fixed it up a lot. I remember, not to get too much on that game, but it was kind of out of sequence originally, and then they updated it to where you could actually play it in order, and that made it much more of a refined experience, in my opinion. But anyway, trying to figure out who the origami killer is, it's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of twists and turns to it. It's definitely a game that I highly recommend. If you're looking for a game with like a ton of action and platforming or something like that, adventure, that's not what this game is. This game is that something different, something else. But if you are looking for something different, something else, then this is definitely the one to try. I always recommend this game to people. I was trying to think of a good racing game to put in this slot, and then I remembered, I've been spending a lot of time with Motorstorm Pacific Rift, and it is probably my favorite racing game on the PlayStation 3. Yeah, I know like a lot of people like the Gran Turismo series, and I do too, and those are good games, and there's a Gran Turismo game on the PS3, but I have to say that Pacific Rift is just such a fun game to play, and I like the more arcade style that it has to offer, as opposed to the more simulation style of the Gran Turismo game. So, at the end of the day, we all have kind of these things that we look to and that we kind of look for in a game, and I think Pacific Rift is that for me. It kind of has that Forza Horizon feel to it, and it's a game that, it does have a little bit of a learning curve, but it's still just such a really interesting game to kind of go through and play. And, at the end of the day, I think that's what it's all about, and again, just showing the uniqueness and the variety that PlayStation has can't really be understated. Can't do a PS3 list without The Last of Us. Yes, I know this game is good, and it's good because they remastered it and they also remade it. So you have both those things kind of going for it. At the end of the day, it is one of the most awarded games of all time, and who can really complain? I feel like this was when Naughty Dog was at their best. They had come off Uncharted 2 and 3, and then also did The Last of Us right as like this great standing ovation at the end of the PS3 life cycle, saying, hey, you know what, we really came back and did something amazing. And I really feel like Naughty Dog was ahead of the game back then. They did the trilogy for Uncharted, they did The Last of Us. It's hard to really complain. That was probably my favorite time in gaming, and you can't do a list on PS3 without this game. I know it's on other devices now, but still, if you're a collector, you're going to want to collect this game. You're going to want to play this game. It is a ton of fun. It is an epic story, and one that you're not going to want to miss. I told you I was going all out on this video, and Shadow of the Colossus is a great PlayStation 3 upgrade. Yeah, a lot of people prefer the original, and I can understand that. The reason why I do agree with some of the remasters and things, especially coming from like the PS2 era, is because if you go back and try to play PS2 games on a newer TV, it doesn't look good at all. It's incredibly blurry, and it's just not a fun experience. Now, if you have an old school CRT, you're probably in much better shape, but I like that they upgraded this and put it on the PlayStation 3, and actually you could get a remake of this game on the PS4 that's a lot of fun as well. I just find the PS3 version, they're all great. I mean, it's the same game, but again, it really just kind of comes down to opinion. I highly recommend this game on PlayStation 3, though, if you're into the PS3 and collecting and things like that. It's just such a fun experience, and you can't go wrong with it. This is an epic game. Give it a try if you've never played it. Yeah, I put this game in my very first PlayStation 3 video, and I'm bringing it back. Remember Me, and this game is actually done by the studio that did the Life is Strange game, and they did a really good job with this. The game didn't take off. It came out very late in the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 life cycle, but it is such a fantastic game, and as you can see, it looks great and holds up well. And if you're looking for something just a little bit different, then I think this might be really up your alley, because they've just done such a fun job with making sure that this game has enough different things about it to where it can appeal to a good size audience. Now, we're never going to see a sequel, and this game isn't very expensive to pick up or anything like that, but it's a lot of fun to kind of get into. And if you're just looking for that thing that is, maybe you missed out on back then, this would be it. It's tied to the console still, and it's just such a good underrated gem of a game. Give it a try if you're picking up a PlayStation 3. You won't regret it. Last and certainly not least is Killzone 2. This game is a game that honestly kind of set the PS3 apart from everything else. And, obviously it got a lot of heat for the E3 reveal that wasn't really in-game or actual game footage. But I will say that it did set a high expectation for the game, and I think Guerrilla Games delivered on that aspect of it. If it never even hit the graphical aspect, it still was a great game and a fun game all of its own. Calling it a Halo killer was probably foolish from the start, but still looks great, plays great. These games, Killzone 2 and 3, are tied to the PlayStation 3, so if you've never experienced them, pick them up. Hard to believe that the PlayStation 3 was the home to so many great shooters. Killzone 2 and 3, the Resistance trilogy, SOCOM, Confrontation, SOCOM 4, I think. There were so many great shooters, but yeah, play this game. Fantastic series if you've missed out on it. Amazing stuff. And then let me know what you think, because I love these games. No matter what type of game you're looking for, the PS3 has you covered. There's great Call of Duty games on there with campaigns. There's even some that are kind of still active on the multiplayer side. There's a little bit of everything. A lot of platformers. You've got Ratchet and Clank. You've got the Infamous series. You've got, so many just amazing games. And, I obviously couldn't fit them all here, but these are some of my personal favorites that I listed here. If you're going to pick up a PlayStation 3, it is the perfect time to start collecting for this console. You can get a lot of the games incredibly cheap. Multi-platform games are extremely cheap. You can pick up stuff like the Mass Effect trilogy. They're a couple bucks a piece. Dragon Age 1 and 2 and 3, they're a few dollars a piece. It's such an easy and inexpensive platform to pick up games for. So I highly recommend it. And I hope you guys all have a fantastic time gaming. And let me know what you guys like the game on, or what you want to see next. If you enjoy my content, please remember to subscribe and like the videos. Until then, I'll catch you next time.